Right, afternoon guys. So post lunch session. Funny story. So the Newcastle VMUG, just pre-COVID, one guy fell asleep. Right, proper catching flies. Back in June, July for the London VMUG, 2 guys fell asleep. So either way, with my dulcet tones, or I'm not sure. But that means pretty much half of this crowd's going to be asleep in about 20 minutes, right? So if I need to spike the volume or tone, just let me know. So yeah, all good. So very quickly then, just to make sure, this is a migration from VMware NSX-V or NSX for vSphere over to NSX-T and via a specific migration pathway using the migration coordinator. So all in place, but we'll come on to what's what in a moment. So quickly, just about me. So I'm a technical architect at Extrovert. We're a cloud services, lifecycle and managed services provider. Stall downstairs, nice banner, whatever. However, although I'm branded today, this is a community session, right? I've been quite integrated into the community for a long time. So again, this is all about it. So come find me later if you've got any questions, or we can chat through. Yeah, we'll have those chats later. Right, today, so quick NSX recap, what it is, where we come from, what we're going to, the migration modes and options. As I mentioned, we're going to be kind of focusing on a specific niche requirement, right? The fact that you're here, hopefully, you're sort of in a position now to migrate to T, okay? V, end of life, coming up, or the extended support is coming up in January 24, but again, with options in and around that for later extensions. So, but ideally we need to move off, right? So we'll be looking at the workflow, what it is, how it's pulled together, and then the migration coordinator in action. Now, I'm not a live demo guy at all, right? So my job, everything I do is risk averse, right? So doing a live demo today isn't that. So yeah, but if you want to see it, again, a couple of links at the very end, which take you through it, all the screenshots, click, 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 next, 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 and more importantly, all the pre-planning and prereqs that you'll need to put in place, right? So a quick recap. How many names do we need? There's one missing off there, which was vCloud Network and Security, which I started with. Then NSX for vSphere, all that good stuff. And then we've had loads of names, right? So I know from 4.x, we're now NSX, right? No T, no V, nothing, just VMware NSX. So, but today, I'll be referring to it as T, all right? Because we're going from V to T. Otherwise, it's NSX-V to NSX, and then it gets a bit confusing, right? So we'll continue with that. So where we come from. So yeah, back in 2013, after VCNS, obviously several name changes, we introduced, or continued, distributed firewalling, software-defined stuff, right? Logical routing, NAT, VPN, all that good stuff. And load balancing as well, okay? That's been enhanced somewhat with NSX-T. However, January 2022, end of life, extended support options available, but again, we won't be going into that, all right? So T, vastly superior product, so that's where we want to get to. And with it, what does it come? So again, 2016, unfortunately, VMware, again, realized that, we haven't given a migration tool or pathway, again from VCNS to NSX for vSphere. So again, quickly then, VMware introduced what we know as the migration coordinator. So again, then very young sort of tool. You'll see it as an unstarted service by default in the NSX managers. Again, it's something we need to start in order to kick this action off. But again, superior functionality, as I mentioned. Back in the day, it was hypervisor agnostic, so we don't care if it's ESX or KVM, although support for KVM is now dropped in 4. So again, we've gone back to vSphere sort of specific, which is fine, because 99.9% of the customer base, right, were vSphere users. So we're all good. Again, I've got load balancing on there, little asterisks there, because now we're moving to advanced load balancing, previously AVI, multi-site, multi-location, again, flagship stuff, right? So a multi-site, light, or federation is all good stuff there. But cool product. I've worked with it for years. Big advocate for it. It's all I do really day to day. Yeah, and it works really, really well. But we'll come on to any NSX specific questions maybe a bit later. Lots to run through. So migration options. Lots. Okay, so right, let's be straight up. Okay, anything in place is going to add an element of risk. Okay, upgrade your phone, migrate a phone, upgrade your laptop in place. We've all seen them go bang, right, over the years, or, you know, extra work needed to bring it back to life. So, if you can, and I say this to customers on a regular basis, what's your budget? Have you got new kit? Can you evac some hosts from your current clusters to create new clusters? If the answer is yes, brilliant, we're going greenfield. And then we'll do a lift and shift approach, move across distributed firewall rules, move across the workloads, depending on what mechanisms the customer's got in place. Could be SRM, Veeam, could be a straight cross vCenter, vMotion, whatever. All right, but that allows us to have a new environment. Okay, you can scale up, you can use it in parallel, no issues, and then when you're ready, you can move either application by application over, you can focus on a network at a time. Brilliant. In the scenario where you can't, and you have to do it in place, okay, again, we're adding a little bit of risk, but we're using a supported tool called the Migration Coordinator. So you can see we've got standard migration modes, fixed topologies, so there's like 5 that allows. I haven't found one customer using one of those topologies. And when I say topology, I mean literally that. So maybe a distributed logical router connected to an edge services gateway and then out to physical top of racks. And then there's 5 of those supported topologies. User defined is just that, so you can define what the end topology should be, and we're going to cover that in detail. And then we can do other things. So we can migrate just the networking, or there's integration with ARIA automation previously, vRealize automation. And then some advanced stuff as well, so just edge, cutover, just distributed firewall. So you've got a lot of options. So today we're just going to configure, or rather focus on the user-defined in-place complete migration end-to-end, right? So ideally, the process should be next, click, click, click. But like anything that we do, there's planning, your due diligence, your checks, all this stuff that will ideally need to go through change process, right? Fully documented. So the user-defined topology. So effectively we're doing in place. So as you say, it's end-to-end, click, click, click. We're moving everything. So logical networking, all of the security configurations, i.e. distributed firewall, edge firewall. Edges, big one, because you're going to get loss of connectivity as it gets moved from ESGs, for example, over to T0s. Change control, right? Make sure the customer's aware. End customer stakeholders. Hosts, no, we're not gonna experience any disconnects, okay? Because naturally, my migration coordinator is going to talk to vSphere. It's going to say, right, you host 1 evac, maintenance mode is going to kick in, move all the VMs off. By that point, your north-south routing is back up because the edges are done and dusted, all right? Workload VMs, they're kind of done and dusted post, because as a host is upgraded, or migrated, sorry, effectively upgraded, right, or migrated, your NSX logical switches, or NSX-V logical switches, are effectively migrated to NSX-T segments, and then VMs are just, you know, as and when DRS wants to kick in, yeah, move VMs back, it'll know about the new networks, and it'll place them on the new networks. All automated, all supported, all good. Okay? Any questions so far? Happy? Cool. So before we get on to what it can do, so here, right, so kind of a couple of prereqs that we need to do, and this you can do ahead of time, okay? So deploy your new NSX manager. You can, if you want, deploy the 3 and then bring up the cluster, apply your virtual IP so it's load balanced if you want, right? Loads of time to do that. Do it ahead of the time. Start your migration coordinator service. Ready, done, okay? Now the edges are slightly different. Usually within sort of a production NSX-T environment, you want to create a new edge. You'll go into the system area and simply deploy or add a new edge. Done. Give it all the configuration, and NSX will do that for you. It'll talk to vSphere, it'll create the VM, it'll deploy the OVA, job done. For this, it's slightly different, right? And this is the process. You need to deploy the edges via OVA manually, so that there's 0 configuration on them. They're just sitting there, vanilla, and then they're manually added to the management plane. Again, ready for the migration coordinator to do essentially the injection of the configuration, okay? Act a point in the process, we'll configure the T0s and Tier 1s. So T0, our northmost routing component. This will effectively peer with top of rack, whatever you're using. We don't, as Joe said this morning, we don't really care, right? But again, we just need a layer 3 termination there to act as its gateway. Okay, and that's going to be needed for TEP, both host and TEP edge, which is a new concept in T. Yeah, and then we provide the mapping, right? So we'll come on to that in a minute. So what it can do is we can see here, so effectively we've got an ESG. Again, we've got peered with physical fabric. Don't really care about that bit. So this is one example. So ESG, we're migrating over to a T0 gateway. Cool. And you can see that's what peer into physical. And then likewise, we've got down southbound or lower down, we've got a DLR or another ESG, which in this example, we'll move into a Tier 1, okay? Or we can consolidate. So we've got, again, topmost, we've got ESG, and then lowermost, we've got DLR. Again, we can consolidate those components or constructs, essentially, and place them onto our edge cluster, onto a single T0. Again, we can do that again with a Tier 1. Okay, so again, consolidation down. But what we can't do, so obviously, right, we've got an ESG, right? It's a construct that lives on a VM. We can't split that across a T0 and T1. That's just, can't be done. Wanted to call it out, but it's kind of obvious, right? And what we've got, 2 ESGs to a single T0. So again, the T0 component is very critical. Again, we're down to what the edges support, and that's only one Tier 0 essentially, okay? It won't support 2. You'll need another edge cluster for that. So the workflow itself then, before we get into the actual migration path, okay? So just to let you know, there's 60 odd slides, right? But they're all mostly screenshots, right? So we'll fly through them. I say that and people are like, oh my God. Right, so the workflow itself is pretty easy, right? So I mentioned that service on the managers, right? Start it up, start service, migration dash coordinator, job done. Now the prerequisite bits are key there, right? So what essentially it will do, right? And you'll see this not in action, in pre-recorded screenshot form. Effectively, you connect to your vSphere environment, you connect to NSX-V, and it will just absorb all that information, all that configuration, without any negative impact to production. And if you're going to do this, I would advise you do this way in advance, multiple times, again and again and again, until you're happy, because you're going to be asked for questions which you need to provide answers to. All right, so what's the VLAN ID for the new TEP network? What's the TEP interfaces? All this good stuff, which you'll see in a minute. Ideally, that import needs to be the same output every single time, right? So you'll repeat that process, and you can use that as maybe a change control submission, right? This is what we're going to be asked for. Document it, tick, 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 because you're going to be running this out of hours in the change window, really, as you migrate the edges over, because again, loss of connectivity. So again, you want that repeatable process, right? Tough enough doing these outage windows when things are changing, but this is generally pretty rigid. The pre-migration configuration, again, that's migrated in. The config migration is migrated in. So again, you're Q&Aing and providing input as you're going through that process. So you can do that, you can roll back, you can do that, you can roll back multiple times, no impact at all. But then we get to the actual migration pieces. So as I said, edges, you're going to get an outage. There's no way around that. Chap in London asked me at the last session, how long is that going to be? Well, it depends. So if you're using static routes, don't be using static routes, please, right? Use something dynamic. So OSPF, convergence time on that is pretty quick. So as your ESGs kill that northbound connectivity, again, OSPF is just going to drop out. And as the T0s come up, ping, brilliant. BGP, convergence maybe a couple of seconds longer. In reality, I see maybe 8 packet drops. It's not bad, is it, really? One environment cutting over to another and 8 packet drops, that's fine. Fast enough sometimes as 4, but if you've got BFD configured as well for that higher detection of failure, then yeah, you're going to be even quicker. So unless there's a change in the BGP protocol itself, then yeah, you're not going to be that quick. So we can expand that out. So let me just come over to this side. So we've got 2 sort of areas here that we're going to configure out, right? So layer 2, so all your switching, all that good stuff, and then layer 3 we'll come on to in a bit. But in between, you can see there's this new defined topology area, right? And this is where we're going to configure essentially step away from the migration coordinator and actually configure the routing components in NSX-T. Bring up BGP, OSPF, whatever we want to do, and then go from there. And in both areas, as I said, there's this Q&A sort of style area where essentially we've got translate, resolve, config, and then check. So yeah, we're going to sort of onboard all this configuration from NSX-V. It's going to ask us a load of questions. Right, this is what I can see in V. What do you want to do about it in T? Give me some information. Then it's going to migrate essentially a JSON file, right? So when it's doing this translate resolve, it's essentially creating out or building out a JSON file, which it then imports and then it checks for you. So again, tick, tick, tick. If there's any errors, it'll tell you what the errors are, and really you want to be rolling back and fixing that before reattempting, okay? And again, we've got exactly the same for layer 3 and all your routing stuff. Mentioned the rollback. So rollback option via migration coordinator GUI. Now that goes right the way up to edges. You can migrate the edges over. Any issues? Your applications aren't coming back up. Some application owners screaming. Then, okay, right, we'll just migrate the edges back from T0s to ESGs. Then do your troubleshooting. Ideally, you might need another change window to work out what's gone on. Again, this is fully supported, so if you've done your stuff, all right, if you've done your due diligence a couple of times, you're going to be on the phone to GSS, usually, right? But again, they've got a team there specifically for this. More so now, as there's a big push of customers going from V to T. Now, there is a cutoff there, so we've got a big line between edges and hosts that say you can't roll back here. You can. There's a KB article for it. Maybe I need to update this slide, but this is based on VMware, so again, we'll go from there. So again, you can roll back. I've had to do that with a customer, and it wasn't very pleasant, if I'm honest. But that was another story, so I'll come on to that. Right, let me just check the time. Cool. So if there are lots of questions, we'll be right up to the 45 minutes, right? If there's not, then I'll give you some time back and you can grab a coffee. But we'll run through this bit now, okay? So what do we need? Right, all environments healthy, obviously, right? Backups taken, you know, no pending restarts. You want to clear your alarms, all that good stuff. The important one there on the left-hand side, sorry, is VDS 7. So your distributed switch needs to be 7 or higher, because NSX-T from 3.2 up is going to leverage that, right? Instead of the old NVDS, which again was a hypervisor agnostic construct, but we don't need to worry about that now. NSX for vSphere, obviously, get it up to the latest. Okay, so it's, again, you're running fully supported, healthy backups, no unpublished changes. And this one is the biggie, okay? So manage a cluster and edge nodes deployed to vSphere. I mentioned earlier that, you know, those edges shouldn't be configured, completely vanilla. No user-defined distributed firewall rules. So if you've deployed this new environment and you're waiting for that cutover, don't let, you know, Tram just go, oh, well, let's create a firewall rule, because it's going to break things, right, as it starts to import stuff over. Mentioned TEP IPs, so obviously tunnel endpoints. In the NSX-V, there was only a concept of a host TEP. Now we're running edge TEPs as well. So again, this is an area of the network, maybe a new VLAN that you might need to carve out. Give it a 24, make it easy, right? Well, if you're only using a couple of TEP IPs, then maybe not, but I'll leave that to you. And we'll come on to dynamic routing and whatnot in the next bit. Right, so what that look like? So we've got NSX-V, NSX-T, right? And generally, you're going to be happy with your network and your sort of topology. So you're going to be doing the same thing, right? So we've got, we've got logical switch A, B, and C, and overlay segment A, B, and C. They're just new terminologies. You can see the subnets and networks there are the same. We've got a DLR on the left-hand side connected to an ESG, whereas on the new sort of end goal, we've got a tier 1 connected to a T0, and now we've got a logical switch connected to directly to an ESG, and over here we've just got the same in NSX-T speak. So I'm happy with my topology, so we're just going to convert it in the same way, okay? So we're going to have the same number of T0s to ESGs, and we're going to have the same number of tier 1s to DLRs. So we're going to keep things simple and just do a like-for-like migration. Because remember, this is a migration tool, right? It's not, let's change the world while we're doing it. Let's get off an unsupported platform to a supported platform, and then we can start consuming the new things and the new features once you're there. Okay, so tick that big box first and then go from there. Right, so I mentioned earlier what are we going to do, and that's the user-defined topology. So we're in the system area here, for those that have seen NSX-T, so system migrate. Obviously, if you haven't started that migration coordinator process on the managers, you ain't going to see this. So again, little robot, please start me service. It'll tell you what to do and what to start, and away you go. All right, so again, we can go, we've got all these other options. All right, so we're going to go NSX for vSphere, user-defined topology. Okay, now on this area, on this slide, effectively we're going to work through. So yeah, prepare for migration. So yeah, it's just a bit of information linked to the knowledge base, right? What we're going to migrate, everything complete. Okay, we're going to give it some credentials so we can actually connect to vSphere and NSX-V. So you'll need to, you know, call those out ahead of time, and then we're good to go. And then we import. Okay, so again, it's just going to pull all the data in. No changes at this point. No changes for ages yet, right? So again, tick, tick, tick. It's going to take a few minutes. I'm sure you got lots of coffee because it is quite a, it's going to take some time, right? So again, what we've done, we've checked the prereqs, good. Again, it'll start to call out things like, right, you're not using VDS 7. If you're in a change window and you haven't upgraded your VDS yet, then it's a bit of a bugger. We need to get this done first, right? So again, check your prereqs, again, all called out here. Import configuration of vCenter, import configuration of NSX for vSphere, and then we're kind of into it, right? So I mentioned earlier we've got these 4 areas: translate, resolve, migrate, and then check. So hopefully you can see those across the top. And these are all layer 2. So translate the configuration. We're creating JSON files basically, right? So we're importing NSX-V, creating a JSON file to what it should look like in T. The resolve, again, this is the Q&A, right? So very clearly, please provide an edge transport node IPs to create an edge cluster. Do you want to migrate VLAN distributed port groups? Not really, I wouldn't say. I haven't come across customers. So you got maybe a vMotion VLAN distributed port group in vSphere. Do you want to put that in NSX? NSX fails, you got a domino effect of, you know, catastrophic failures, maybe. It's your call. You can if you want to, all right? I wouldn't. Keep some things outside. vMotion, vSAN, storage networks maybe don't deserve to be in NSX-T. So again, you can tick these. Some will have recommendations, so a default and recommended, but review them, okay? They might be recommended, but they might not be fit for purpose. TEP VLAN for the edge transport nodes, again, you'll need to have called that out ahead of time. And again, we're just defining it. So you'll click it, pops up, what is the VLAN ID, enter it, submit. Now you notice at the top, you've got this submit button. So as you work through these and you submit, some of these will, depending on what you put, it may create then additional questions, okay? So as you keep submitting, you might think, oh, right, I've done it, I've completed it all, and then, oh, right, it's created another few questions, which is fine. But again, if you run this ahead of time, again, we're not in the change window right now, right? You can run this weeks in advance and then just roll it back and run it again. But we expect the questions that you're asked to be the same every time, right? Consistent. Unless there are any major infrastructure changes within V, then you should be good. So as we keep submitting and as we keep giving the answers, then again, you're going to get green across the board. All right, so we're good to go. And then we've got a nice continue at the bottom there. So the migrate itself is just that, right? So it's going to start to create these constructs. So it's going to see maybe you've got a logical switch in V and then you need a segment in T. So you're going to get a report back. So again, if you want to, you can take this, create your documentation, and then have that as part of the change if you wanted to. Right, and then check realization. So again, you've gone from one bit of input, which has been injected into a JSON file, which is then being imported into a further JSON file, which has then actually started to create things. So within NSX, what we'll see then when we get to this point is check realization. We'll run it, we'll check it. You can see it's successful. And then if you were to jump back to maybe networking segments in NSX-T, then you'll start to see segments created. You'll start to see distributed firewall rules created, exactly the same names, all right? So ready for that onboarding. But again, no changes to production, and that's the important thing. So what have we done? So yeah, configure the edges and gateways. Okay, so that's going to be coming up next. So at this point we stop. Okay, we're at the point within the migration coordinator where I said we've injected stuff. Now we need to start to bring up our sort of routing infrastructure, because based on the questions and answers that we did previously, the edges that we deployed earlier, remember I said they were vanilla, right? They've now been configured. Okay, so they're ready, waiting for routing stuff to happen, right? So in our case, T0s and Tier 1s. So it's this area here now that we're going to create, because it's not going to create those for you. But what it's done is allow you or configure the edges to facilitate these routing components. So again, what you're going to need, all right, so you're going to need new IPs for your uplink interfaces. Again, this is lab, right? So we've got one. Now, really, I've got 2 edges. I should have 4, all right? So for no single points of failure anywhere. So here I've got BGP, OSPF, all right? So again, if you need to do any configuration on the physical side, then you can do that ahead of time, right? Create your new BGP neighbors, OSPF, yeah, just update your documentation around your neighbors there. And yeah, configure away, right? This is all the prereq stuff that is all good and trusted. What are we expecting to see? So BGP, yeah, NSX-V, so we've got one edge using BGP, right, which ends with the octet.11, 10.061.11. So you can see that's been up for 2.5, 3 hours. So it's not a production environment, it's just lab. And then you can see, where are we? We've got 12, which, so before the migration coordinator, .12, the new T0 NSX-T, that's just waiting, it's not established. And then after the configuration of our T0, then up it comes, okay? With the OSPF, it's a little bit, again, quicker, easier, maybe less configurable, but again, we've got both neighbors up there. Okay, so what have we done? All right, so we've done all the layer 2 stuff. We've given it the information ready for, we're working now towards the edge failover. So we're getting closer now to, we'll call it squeaky bum time, right? So again, this is where your change window is going to come into play. All right, so we talk about user defined. This is exactly the page, okay, where we're defining the topology. So on the left-hand side, hopefully you can see, maybe it's a bit small, we've got ESG01 on the top, which we're mapping through to T0 gateway 01. And this is what we've just created there, okay? T0 gateway 01, T0 gateway 02, T1 gateway 01, and then again, we're mapping those from a drop-down. Now, if you've got, I don't know, tens, maybe 100 ESGs and DLRs, clicking through all of those is going to be a bit annoying. Certainly in a change, right? You want to remove that human element for potential for error, right? So we do allow upload mapping via JSON. So again, you can jump in, create your own JSON file. There's loads of examples via VMware's KBs where you can just fill out, and again, it's all part of the change process, right? Prereqs. You can do that, get it peer reviewed, get it checked, and away you go. So you can upload a map in there via JSON. Do not migrate layer 3 to layer, well, you don't want to do that. So again, this is not part of this. But if you wanted to, you could even bypass it. But for 3 entities, yeah, drop down, nice and easy, right? But again, JSON works well, and certainly with the bigger customers I've had, we've had to do that. Okay, so we've completed all our translate, resolve, migrate, check, and then we've defined the topology. Now we do it all again for layer 3 and 4, all right? So as you can imagine, what we're doing, we're importing again. Certain elements, yeah, fine, successful, continue. And then we get asked questions again, okay? Now this is all relating to, as it states, layer 3 and 4 to 7. So this is going to be all of your routing stuff, maybe access controls. What else have we got? Time servers, right? All the other stuff in and around those components, right? And how they're going to get configured. So we've got static routes are configured on the ESG. What do you want to do about it? Well, in this example, I can't, because the recommended is ignore, all right? So again, this was for, I think I had a DNAT or something like that in place, right? Which wasn't supported. So again, check those supportable configurations. Appliance management, yeah, integration with like AD, for example, all right, or Workspace ONE Access, RBAC, NSS service, or network time services as well. So again, you'll work through those, okay? Some will have recommendations, some won't. But again, it's down to each customer really to carve out what they want to configure as part of this. For this stuff, it's a little bit easier because you can go back in and you can do RBAC yourself and integrate with AD and whatnot. But again, you just want to get to a supported platform. So just like before, again, we've done that import. We've provided a lot of answers, and then we're doing the migration of all that nice configuration that we've put together in UI format, right? So again, it's going to map things. So again, just like before with the layer 2 stuff, you've got the vSphere object type, or what it looks like in vSphere. So bad example, but you've got virtual wire. That's back from the VCNS days, which under the hood on NSX-V still stated wire. But again, now you've got segment. Okay, so again, very similar, but you can see what it maps to, and more importantly, what the count is. So if you've got lots of edges, lots of segments, all that good stuff, you're going to get more a higher count. Again, lab environment, right? So small numbers. Check realizations, yeah, it's going to be doing checks and balances and making sure that that's all happy and healthy. Again, you'll start it, you'll run it, you'll hopefully get successful, and then hit continue. This can take a few minutes as it does its checks because it depends on the amount of information in those JSON files. But again, you're going to start to see things being created at this point. Okay, so if you've configured time servers, for example, right, you'd expect a system configuration time server. You'll see all this stuff starting to pump in. But again, you've got the option to roll back, okay, at each stage. So again, you can run this ahead of time. We've again still now to this point not made any changes to production, okay. Right, the squeaky time. So this is your change window now, okay. So the previous slot, run back and forth, right? Process it back and forth. Roll it back, run it again, roll it back, run it again. What you're trying to get to is a point where you're not seeing any, oh, that's new, that's bad. You don't want to be seeing that stuff. So you want to see consistently the same things, the same questions, you're providing the same input, the same inputs, time again. So you'll start and you're only given one option. Do you want to migrate or cancel? And we've all hovered over that, go button, haven't we? And gone, oh, okay, we're in the window now. So that's generally where, I've worked with those two guys and we've all been around the same desk and we're like, do you want to press it? It's your turn, or you screwed up last week or something, whatever. But yeah, this is the bit. And this is where your comms to your stakeholders are going to come in, right? So yeah, we're expecting an outage. Now, generally what VMware recommend is the edges and the hosts within the same window. So that window might be 2 weeks, that's fine. But ideally, if it takes the edges, reality, 15 minutes max to fail over. Outage window, when I said earlier, maybe a max of like 8 packets, but it's gonna be doing other stuff in the background, like starting services and bringing things up. But really, from a workload perspective, we're only looking at about 8 packets. Can be more, can be less. Time and time again, I see about 8. 4 is brilliant. Customers like, wow, that's awesome. So that's pretty good. At that point, yeah, it's still going to be migrating, right? So it'll still show like 50%, 70%. But again, it's just doing its magic in the background. So, well, what's actually happened there? So when we talk about we've migrated the edges, what does that mean, right? So, you've got traffic now. So these ESGs, for example, right, we've killed them off, right? But how are we talking to those still, right? Because we haven't really done anything over here. We've just created the tier 1 and then connected it to a T0, which then we've peered with the physical fabric, right? So the physical fabric goes, yeah, cool. I can see neighbors. I'm talking to another routing component. How are we getting over there? So effectively, what's happening? So we've removed that resilience to the ESGs and the DLRs, and we kind of under the hood. I say kind of because VMware still won't give me an answer. They've effectively created a bridge, right? And they've bridged across from a segment essentially to a logical switch. Okay, so if you talk to GSS and they're like, oh, what's going on there? They're like, oh, it's the magic sauce or whatever, right? But yeah, they've created a bridge, right? Which if you've got HCX, for example, you create a layer 2 extension, then it's kind of what's happening under the hood. At the end of the day, NSX, people talk about, yeah, ESX is, you know, the pivotal pillar of everything we do. That's not these, yeah, it is, but NSX, I think, is one of the biggest ones. It's in every product that's out there, really. So effectively, we're in this kind of halfway house now. So we're advertising our routes via the NSX components, our NSX infrastructure. So all the routes northbound in the physical world is going to come now via these components, okay? NSX-V is effectively dead. As I say, application workloads, we're communicating out, websites are still up, yeah, all good, application owners are happy. At that point, you're pretty much out of your maintenance window as I see it, because we've got the hosts left to do. So with the hosts, let's come back onto edges, sorry. Yeah, so this is where we want to be. So we hit start, as I say, squeaky time. Again, 4 packet drops in this one. So this is a ping to a workload VM, right? 4 packet drops, nice and simple. And that's ideally perfect world, right? That's what we want to see. And as we mentioned earlier, so so we're looking now at pre and post migration. So again, our NSX-V ESG, you can see was established, and post migration, now we're dropping to idle there, okay? So again, we're all happy. You can see the OSPF neighbors, one has dropped out now. So we're in a happy place. Do your checks as well. So again, if we do a trace route to a workload VM post, well, I've got .12, okay, where are we? No, yeah, 61.11, which is the ESG in NSX-V, and then post edge migration, we're going via 61.12, okay? So again, you can see that flip over, application workload is great. Oh, there you go, I didn't have to do that, I could have just done that. It's been a while. Last one, so hosts. So again, if I just show you the previous slide. Roll back, okay? So you can roll, you can migrate, but again, you've got the option to roll back, okay? Even at this point. Annoyingly, for whatever reason that I'm not aware of, they've removed it from this. I did say there's a rollback procedure, all supported, but it's via REST API call, which isn't the greatest because, again, if you need to roll back after your hosts are done, you're in a bit of a tricky situation. Generally on a call with GSS, and you don't want to be doing that stuff in a change window, right? So, again, I've only seen that once, and that was due to other issues within the infrastructure, not NSX related. So again, we migrate the hosts. We've only got start, okay, and migrate. Again, you've got just a last check. Are you running VDS 7? We kind of need that. And the VM workloads are migrated from distributed port groups to segments. Although, if you remember that Q&A, that question, we said no. So I know that's not going to happen. Again, vMotion network, right? We don't want to move that to NSX really. Likewise, storage networks, things like that. You can have tons of traffic going through an edge potentially, which we don't want. So with the hosts then, this is a bit more visual. So you can sort of review the process of this. Obviously we've got the nice little taskbar. You can click on the cluster. I've only got one cluster, for example. And then you can see the progress here of what's actually going on. So if you've got multiple clusters, what you can do is either start them all off in parallel. You'll only ever do one host, but you can change that as well if you wanted to. And NSX will talk with vSphere and it'll say, right, how many hosts out of this cluster can I actually migrate at the same time? And then it'll, do a lot more. But again, you're running more at risk. But it depends how fast you want to get this done. If you've got hundreds of hosts and you've only got a 48-hour weekend migration window, then again, that's your call, your discussion, your change control. So you can monitor it there. You can also jump into the system and nodes, and then host transport nodes, and you can monitor here, and you can actually see exactly what it's doing. So it's prepping the installation, uploading NSX, installing NSX, stripping off the old VIBs, putting the new ones on, all that good stuff. So again, this is going to take time, right? I think from reality, from actually doing this in the wild, I see maybe 30 to 40 minutes per host. So again, 100 hosts. So that's when you want to be planning those upgrade window or migration windows. And of course, from NSX-V, so we can see things now starting to drop out, starting to unconfigure. I think that's a word, unconfigure, deconfigure, whatever. But again, we're starting to see comms channels going down, which are expected, right? The you will stuff we'll see stuff going on as well in vSphere. So if you look at a host and then you check its tasks and events, you'll see other stuff, but it's not as clear there, and it does get a bit noisy. Yeah, at the end, this is a 2-host cluster, both successful, we're good. At this point, we can hit finish if we wanted to. Bear in mind, if you do hit finish, it takes you out of the migration coordinator, so you can't go back through and step through and see the output of that. So sometimes a customer might say, well, we're not going to finish it for a few weeks because we want to capture those screenshots. We're not going to change anything, we can't, but we can actually see the previous screens so that we can report back to management, change board, whatever you want to do. Right, so only a couple of slides left, guys. Let me just check time. Yeah, bang on, so I've got a couple of minutes left. Again, we've gone from this now with this secret bridging, whatever you want to call it, and again, we've moved them over. It took me about 20 minutes to work out how to do that animation, so I hope you all and then likewise linked up, right? So what we've gone from there, and a good question I had in London, at the London VMUG was, when these VMs come back up. So we've migrated our hosts. So essentially we've removed NSX-V VIBs and we've installed NSX-T. We're using DRS for that. So make sure the cluster's got DRS turned on. You can maintenance mode them manually if you want, right? But again, why would you? So NSX knows that this is the old logical switch. And when I remove the VIBs for V, I won't be able to see them. But it's got that mapping, if you remember from earlier, when it migrates stuff over to T. And then as those hosts come back and DRS says, yeah, cool, that host is good, that host is getting a bit hot, VMs, across you go, then it'll know that those VMs now need to live on the NSX segments. All right, so again, you're golden, you're good to go. Yeah, so in summary, prereqs are key, right? So as I said, make sure that the edge, TEP, VLAN, again, this is all available online, okay? And there's a couple of links at the end if you want to take a screenshot. It'll take you through to the website, and it'll give you more information about this process. Physical fabric, make sure that's configured ahead of time. So when you get to configuring those, the BGP or SPF, static routes even, then things are going to come up, and you can do that ahead of time. Okay, it doesn't have to be in the maintenance window. Yeah, I mentioned migrate your edges and hosts in a single maintenance window. Again, loss of connectivity with the edges. Hosts will simply place in maintenance mode. They aren't restarted. That's a key one there. So again, take the VIBs off, put the new ones on, bring it out maintenance mode, you're good. Migration coordinator. So run it ahead of time, multiple times. Again, why would you not, right? This is a good tool. You can run it, roll it back, run it. And then post, what we haven't talked about are the backups. So you've done all this migration, can go into the backup area and configure your backups, right? Get them off. And then that's probably end of your night, end of your weekend work, and you're done. Uninstall NSX-V. So there's a guide to install that. So you'll strip out the coordinators, detach it from from vSphere, and you're good to go. Right, so just to close, as I mentioned, if anybody wants to take a screenshot of that, those are a couple of links. There's a user-defined topology, which we've done today, and the end-to-end fixed topology, which again is more constrained. So this is pretty much the top-down, right? Everything we've done today and more. And then, yeah, if you want to get in touch, there's some information there. Just reach out, any questions, and yeah. Maybe that's it. But yeah, thank you very much.
One question.
Yes, Mark. Sorry, I don't know your name. Yes, sir.
If you're using NSX-V,
yeah.
Using the security tags in distributed firewall rules, will that be supported when it comes to recreating your firewall rules in NSX-T?
Yeah, all tags, all IP pools, all constructs. A lot of the so the DFW one is a good question, because at the point of migration, NSX-T is not going to know about those components, not going to know about the VMs, for example. So all of your maybe groups, all right, so for VMs, web pool A, web pool B, I don't know, whatever you've got, there'll be IP sets, because it doesn't know what the VMs are. NSX-T can't see them until the hosts come in, until it can see the hosts on the, the VMs on the host. So there's a bit of work and cleanup there to do afterwards.
VMware tools, the IPs?
Yeah, well, it's going to talk to vSphere as well, rather than VMware tools, so NSX, vSphere. But yeah, a bit of work to do there. But post-migration, it will translate. So what you'll see creation of IP sets, and then afterwards, once it does its cleanups, it'll revert those to dynamic groups if needed and stuff like that. So it's quite mature now, to be fair. It is pretty good. Any other questions? No? Dave?
I can't see behind me. Many people actually fell asleep this time.
You did well today, guys. Really impressed, right? I was expecting more. So I'm happy with today. Thank you very much. So if any other questions, if you want to chat, come find me downstairs or whatever, but thank you.